Hi everyone, Elle Hackney here, and welcome back to my YouTube channel where I get to speak to everyone in the book community, whether they be authors, illustrators, podcasters, or industry professional. But today, I have someone I couldn't wait to speak with. She writes romance fiction, she writes romance novels, but I love her blurb where she says, "For my children who don't know how saucy I am, but for my husband who does." Can you please welcome Anne Freeman?
Thanks so much, Lauren. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Can you please dive in and explain that blurb?
So
in
that's the dedication. Yeah. So that's the dedication in Me That You See. Yeah. I guess Me That You See is a saucy tale. It's a bit of a romp. Perhaps a side of myself that my children don't see, but my husband's fully aware.
I thought that was so cleverly written. I just had to start with that. Me That You See, though, I'm currently reading it. We're going to interview you with no spoilers, but it's fantastic. It's so relatable. I can see with your protagonist and everyone around. I can feel a bit of everything when I read their characters. So, where was the inspiration for this? Where did it come from?
Yeah, so Me That You See is set against the backdrop of the online sex industry. And the original idea seed was how much trouble could one woman get herself into without leaving her home? So in the end, I have strayed from that a little bit because I did need to take her out of the home in that sort of act two mix up, where she then meets a whole new cast of characters. She's really immersed in that new world. She has a whole new set of friends. So I needed to take her out of the home. But initially, the idea was how much trouble could she get into without leaving her home?
And quick disclaimer on this one. What I meant by introducing that was this is not Lauren's next career move, just so you know.
Hey, we life for a writer is tough. We all need a plan B. Like we could be selling pictures of our feet. Like, if AI has anything to say for it, we'll be selling pictures of our feet in no time.
Oh gosh. Well, because when I'm reading this and the main character is like early 20s and it's that breakaway from teen years into finding out who you are as an adult, getting into, oh gosh, I don't want to spoiler alert it, but getting into like a relationship with someone who's got a child, that kind of like it's very, I think anyone who's grown past their 20s can relate to the storyline of this sudden growth because you do have it, but your character's growth is going everywhere. So, how long did it take for you to come up with this plot?
I don't know how long it took. I think initially, as I said, online sex work, I find it really fascinating. I listened to a podcast a number of years back called The Butterfly Effect, hosted by John Ronson, and he tracked the changes that happened in the pornography industry after the advent of free porn on the internet.
Oh,
So when Pornhub sprang up, obviously that was a platform that was stealing content that previously people purchased and putting it online for free. And so there's a whole industry affected by this. People making an honest living in the pornography industry. So whether that be script writers, directors, camera people, performers, the income of these people was affected. And one of the things that sprung up out of that was camming or online sex work, that kind of live stream, more of a girlfriend experience, so interactive, whereas pornography, obviously, you're watching a film. Has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Whereas, camming, you have an opportunity to interact with the performers, get to know them on a more personal level. Because if these people are broadcasting for many hours at a time, it sort of transcends a character. You might have a persona, but much of yourself is revealed to your audience. And so, lonely people kind of get that benefit of getting to know someone. So I find the whole thing really interesting. And on the surface, you might think that a book about online sex work is about sluts and perverts. And what I've tried to do is really humanize both sides of the webcam to give the reader that full, more human experience of an industry that we know very little about. I mean, my demographic, my target reader is sort of, women like us. We don't have a lot of real world interaction with online sex work. We're generally speaking, we're not consumers of it. We're also not behind the webcam. But it is such a compelling, such a fascinating vocation and, a noble profession. However, things start to go very wrong for Lexi when she fails to own her choice to become an online performer, a cam model. And instead, she hides her decision. She hides her actions from everyone that she knows, including her boyfriend, so her new partner, as you said, a single father, and her best friend, Lynn, who really is a very non-judgmental, very supportive friend. But Lexi doesn't really own that choice. And of course, that's when things start to go, well, they get interesting and then they go wrong.
Well, and I can't wait to keep reading because I'm 4 chapters in, and it's quite interesting how what's going to happen is like you said, diving into that online industry, because so far I'm actually falling in love with these characters with their everyday life as well. So I get what you mean by it's written in a way where it's not all about sluts and stuff. I actually think you kind of feel for these characters in the beginning because I can relate to so many of their choices, like Lynn's character as well, because they both work together, Lexi
Yeah,
and Lynn.
work wife.
Work life, yeah, yeah. I think we've all used that term
Yeah.
as well. Yeah. And so so you've come up with this amazing plot, this amazing book, you've done your research with it. When you submitted it, did you find you had to go back and change too many things?
Not really. I think I think my greatest weakness in publishing me that you see has been that the story is very unique. So there's not a lot of books that you can point to and say, well, it's a bit like that, but with a touch of this, or it's like that crossed with that. And that was probably the hardest thing in terms of pitching it. Because as I said, it's not a vocation, it's not an industry, it's not a pastime that many of us in the target readership are familiar with. But that's changing. One of the things that COVID very kindly gifted us, in addition to Zoom, which it enables us to meet today, Lauren, we were also gifted OnlyFans, which
Oh,
of course is a sort of social media type site, a little bit different to camming, but certainly a lot of overlap. It is, I would say, a platform for online sex work. So it's becoming something that's more in the public vernacular. Whereas when I wrote this story, it was quite a few years ago, before anyone, at least in our peer group, had really any awareness of online sex work. So I'd say that has been the biggest challenge for me, is saying like, hey, everyone, there's a whole world out there that is thumping away every day in, day out, night and day, and we know nothing about it. Come with me and I'll tell you about it.
no pun intended, Anne. Um, yeah,
Hopefully.
so we were talking before recording, you and I were talking about the difference between romance and women's fiction. And
Mm.
because you write both, for our audience, can you please sort of explain the difference between the two and where your novel fits into it?
Sure. So romance is defined by the love story is the central plot point. So there can be other things going on, but the whole point of the book is that love story and the protagonist falling in love with the love interest. There's particular beats and plot points that usually are hit within that sort of romance formula. So, as an example, there'd be like an act three breakup. So, everything's that they've finally gotten together, there's an act three breakup, and then there's a grand gesture, and finally they find happiness. And it's a happily ever after or a happy for now. And with women's fiction is one of those terms we love and hate. There's no section for men's fiction. So basically, women's fiction is just like really compelling storytelling, but the protagonist happens to be a woman. We kind of love it and hate it. Like, the whole bookstore should be women's fiction because we read more than men, right? We need a men's fiction section, and you can just go over there. But women's fiction, there can be romantic elements, and certainly in my storytelling, there usually is. But I just find that that's life, that kind of romantic elements and relationships. I would say that friendships between women is probably the more prevalent thing that is present in all of my work, but there's no genre that is, friendships between women. So it's very easy to say, oh, there's romance or there's this or there's that. So it's kind of like the construct of, these are the categories we've been given. But certainly I just think that incorporating those elements makes for just a really rich tapestry of storytelling that I, as a reader, relate very well to, and I find others do as well.
And so, bouncing off this, how did you pitch this? Because, like you said, it's unique.
How did I pitch this? So I have a great relationship with Hawkeye Publishing. So I was a finalist in their Hawkeye Prize. I think it was 2021 for Returning to Adelaide, my debut novel. Hawkeye Publishing went on to publish it. And then Me That You See was also a finalist in their 2022 prize. And ultimately, they went on to publish the novel as well. And what's wonderful about working with Hawkeye is that they're less concerned with comparison titles and more concerned with a cracking yarn. So I think their tagline is elevating Australian stories, elevating Australia's stories and writers, to butcher a tagline. And really, that's their philosophy. So they're less concerned with finding a copycat of last year's bestseller and more concerned with finding your next cracking read. And so fortunately for me, because I didn't have a lot of comparison titles, but funnily enough, so my book came out last year, actually today. This is the anniversary of Me That You See. Hooray. But I wrote it a couple of years prior. And now I'm starting to see more coming through in terms of media. So there was an American novel that came out late last year called Margot's Got Money Troubles. And that is about a woman, a single mother, very young, who finds that she's got this newborn and she can't figure out childcare. When am I supposed to work? How do I pay for the childcare? It's dawning on her that the patriarchy is not set up for her to thrive. She decides to try OnlyFans as a source of income, and her father, who's an ex-pro wrestler, sort of coaches her on developing a persona. So it's like you, but it's sort of larger than life. And the parallel between camming and professional wrestling, what a chef's kiss. But that's being adapted into a television series starring, I think it's Michelle Pfeiffer, Nicole Kidman, Nick Offerman. So this is kind of, when I was out with my hey, I've written this book, it's super interesting and so much fun. There wasn't anything like it. And now it's kind of hitting the big time. And I'm hoping to ride some of those coattails, to be perfectly frank.
Or, well, I would see it as the other way, where you're helping pave the way.
Oh, yeah, that's me, trailblazing.
Trailblazing. So do you think you're going to stick with this genre for a little bit?
So I struggle to really identify what my genre is. I say women's fiction or contemporary fiction because it's quite a large net, but there's usually a little bit of maybe domestic noir in there these days, some romantic elements. Yeah, it's sort of a difficult one to define, but I just once an idea sort of takes hold for me, I just go for it, and the rest we can sort of work out in the wash later. I hope.
Well, I must say, I hope you do continue, because you've got sort of a knack of also making the characters lovable and appealing and also relatable as well. So I really like what you've done with this particular novel, and I can't wait to see what happens for you next.
Thank you.
What are you working on next?
Great question. So late last year I finished a third novel called The Time After Now, and that is a dual timeline. So it's now and 20 years ago. So 20 years ago, it is first love against the backdrop of the Melbourne underground rave scene in the early 2000s. And present day, the protagonist is a wife and mother She is married to not the person that you think she should be married to, and she's managing type 1 diabetes, which is a chronic, incurable disease and disability. And her first love, she finds out that he dies suddenly. So the love she's never gotten over, he suddenly dies. And one night, in the depths of despair, because she doesn't know where to pour her grief, she's not meant to be grieving for this person because he hasn't been in her life for 20 years and she's married to someone else with 2 children. She pours her heart into a message on Facebook Messenger to his account. The next day, she receives a reply, and it's intimate photos taken by him 20 years ago with a threat of exposure. And she's now married to a very prominent barrister who's on track to becoming a magistrate. So this anonymous person threatening her is threatening to unravel her whole life. She doesn't know who it is. She has to figure it out. So it's an alternating timeline of very nostalgic 20 years ago, and the juggle is real of now.
How long is this taking you to write?
um, the one that I just finished, like late last year. I think I finished in September. It took about 10 months, but I had a break in between because I had an anthology project that I was invited to take part in. So I sort of took a couple of months off to do something else. And I've just started working on a fourth one that I don't really have a title for yet. But again, that kind of women's fiction, like what if your perfect life, like your seemingly perfect life, just unraveled? Like, what if it was all pulled out from under you? That's sort of my starting point for the last 2 books.
I'd like to know what skeletons these people have.
I know, I know. It's that veneer of perfection, right? That suburban perfection. But if you delve a little deeper, we're not all sort of gingerbread cutouts. There's stories to tell. There's dark pasts, and secrets kept.
I tell you, Anne, I hope your books are always published.
Thank you. I hope so too.
Like I'm sitting here going, okay, so that's
I
the
know your face. That's wonderful. But that's what keeps you going.
Yeah.
When you tell someone like, oh, this is my idea, and they go, oh, and I go like, I've just sold one.
Right.
I've just sold one.
Are you a scripter, or are you like a plotter, or do you work with Word? How do you make all this magic happen?
So I am fastidious by nature.
Yeah.
So I'm a plotter in life.
Okay.
I plot everything. So of course, writing is no different. But I plot in such a way, it's sort of a skeletal framework, so that there's still a lot of opportunity for those beautiful serendipitous moments where the characters start acting of their own volition, or someone shows up. In the book that I was just telling you about that I finished last year, there was a school dad, and he was just on the school play committee. He was just there, no purpose to him whatsoever. And then he showed up at an event. I was like, well, I didn't know he was going to be here. And then he kept sort of showing up, and it sort of transpires that there's a connection between my protagonist, Olivia, and this school dad. And I had no idea. He literally, like, I took her to a parents' information session, and he was there. And my thought was, what are you doing here? So having those magical, like leaving yourself open enough for the magic to flow in, I think is important. But having the structure appeases my tightly wound, sort of everything in its place nature.
So, do you feel advice for people watching this going, you know what, I've got some great ideas too, but writing a novel is so, for some people, a bit daunting because, you've got to
Yes.
start somewhere. Do you feel you've got to let it happen organically? Because with this father just popping up,
Mm.
you can't force that.
You can't force that. He just showed up. Like, that's
Yeah.
literally nothing to do with me. So for anybody who wants to write a novel or feels that they have an idea seed, but it feels like too big an undertaking to embark upon, I have resources. And I have advice. So,
Right.
two things amazing. So, Save the Cat writes a novel. So, this is a writing craft book that you're obviously very familiar with. It's basically the three-act structure that is used for screenwriting largely, and it's been adapted for novel writing. So, it's three-act structure, 15 plot points. It gives you a framework that then makes that massive project, it breaks it down into something that you can handle, into manageable segments, first of all. So I used that to write my first two books. Since then, I've been turned on to the 90-day novel, which is another writing craft book. Now, the wonderful thing about this is that you can start with a very small idea seed, and the process that you're encouraged through helps to germinate that seed, and it grows in the most amazing way. So at the end of each chapter, so you have this sort of theory, which is very educational, palatable, enjoyable. And then at the end of each chapter, you're encouraged to write like a sort of freestyle writing using prompts. So they're 5-minute exercises. So it might be like write as your protagonist for 5 minutes, say using the prompt, the one thing I always hide about myself is. So really enables you to get a deep dive into your characters, and you can do it for your antagonist or antagonists as well. And what that, particularly with the antagonists, I found with The Time After Now that I finished writing last year, I found that I got to know my antagonist so deeply that I was able to empathize with them.
Oh, wow.
I didn't agree with their choices, but I could understand their motivations. And I think as a reader, there's no such thing as good and evil. Like that is a thing that America invented because they really want a big S on their chest, bless them.
Yeah.
But it's not a thing, right? Like everybody thinks they're the good guy, no matter what. Nobody wakes up and goes, I'm going to have a great day of villainy today.
Yeah. No.
Doesn't happen. So the 90-day novel, and the most surprising thing, so getting deep into your characterization, oh my God, and what a joy as well. Really enjoyable, very low stakes. And I'm at the stage now where I've probably, on this fourth project, I've probably got 15 to 20,000 words of just exploration. So it doesn't feel like, okay, I'm about to start writing a novel. It feels like it started already, like I'm sort of halfway through. I don't know what day that happened, but it just lowers the barrier so that before you know it, you're in the world. So much has revealed itself to you that you didn't know before. And it just, everything feels possible. That the things that you were sketchy on have been resolved and you're just ready to go for it, which is where I'm at now. I'm just about ready to write chapter 1. So, yes, everybody do that. And also find a cheer squad. If you're on Instagram, find me on Instagram and just slip into the DMs and say, I think I want to write a novel. And I will go like, rah, 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 you can do it until you do.
That's actually one of that's what I wanted to ask you next, because you're so passionate about this and you believe in the power of story, and
Yes.
also you believe everyone has a story to tell. Are you available for either, say, high school visits, like those grown children who are becoming adults, who want to write a novel, or library visits, or are you available for writers groups?
I mean, technically, yes. I think my cheer squad services are unofficial. Like I'm just around encouraging people because I think that those encouraging words are so impactful to us all. And so I'm happy to be that person that says, yes, of course you can do it. In terms of being available in a more professional capacity, I run a couple of writers' workshops. So I'm launching a new one, excuse me, next month, and it's called Brief but Brilliant: The Art of Short Storytelling. As you can imagine, there's a lot of transferable knowledge there, to work for longer form fiction as well. I also teach a workshop called Stories with Spice: Bypass the Cringe and Bring the Smolder. And that's a sex scene writing class, which is, I am performing a public service.
No high schools for that.
No high schools. We have a minimum age requirement, but it is very tasteful. So there's nothing untoward or irksome. But absolutely. I mean, I love teaching my workshops. I love presenting and I might not have all the answers, but what I have is infectious enthusiasm, just, in abundance. And if that can help to make someone feel inspired or to, get them putting pen to paper or fingers to keyboard, then I'm here for it.
Absolutely. So, how do we contact you?
So I hang out on Instagram. My handle is Anne Freeman Writes, and that will lead you anywhere you need to go.
Perfect. So, anyone watching this interview today, if you're curious about the courses, or actually just want to drop Anne a line and ask her a few questions, or even better, buy her book, review her book wherever you get your book from, whether it be through an online bookstore, in-person bookstore. Make sure you do leave a review. Goodreads is also another good one. Make sure you do 5-star this novel. Make sure you contact Hawkeye. Tell Hawkeye how amazing Anne is, because we want to see more of these books come to life. And final words of advice for anyone out there watching this interview today. Any final last words?
I'd say for the writers, we're waiting for your story. Can you please write it now? We're
Chop,
waiting
chop.
to read it.
Lovely. And thank you so much for joining me today. And thank you so much for sending me a copy of your book, Me That You See. I am enjoying it. It's something that I wouldn't usually pick up. And I'm really glad you sent it to me. It's well written and I can't wait to see where the story goes. And thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks, Lauren. This has been so fun. I really appreciate your generosity.